could be monitoring. But what would be some of the most important ones for an independent eye care business to monitor, to gauge the effectiveness of their marketing?
Well, there's really one thing that stands out above everything else, which is calls and form fills or clicks to a scheduler or something like that.
From their
All
website.
the track, all the track, or from anywhere, any way you can track people who are scheduling or calling is a great indication of the effect. So, for example, if you're using a call tracking number on print ads or on an online on a Facebook ad you're running, if you can track how many calls that generated, or even better, if you can listen to the calls and see and hear what that results in, that's at the end of the day, that's the idea of what you're trying to do. You're trying to generate growth with new patient appointments through the things that you're doing. So if you can't, if you don't see any calls and you don't get any appointments from it, all of the KPIs and all the analytics and traffic really is meaningless. So
Okay, okay, well, let's just clarify for our listeners, and not at all because I have no idea what you're talking about. How does one go about using a call tracker number? If it isn't the number of your main business line, how do you designate a tracker
So
number?
there are a variety of different services online. We provide it as part of our marketing, but there are all kinds of different companies online that will do call tracking numbers. Doesn't cost a lot of money, and all it does is it just filters the call through a third party number and then to your practice. So you choose a local area code, and then that call would go through that number and then come to your practice line. Why that happens is, or the benefit of it is, when it goes through that number, it now tracks what number was calling you, how long the call was, and you can set it up to record or not record. So you can listen to staff issues, you can assess the value of the call. So it's definitely important for anything that you're spending significant money on to really have a good indication of what's working and what's not.
Interesting. I mean, I knew that people did that a lot with click-throughs and stuff on websites with designated URLs, so you could figure out where the traffic was being driven from. It had never even occurred to me that you could do that with phone numbers as well. So that's real
Sure.
cool. Okay, so callback numbers. Wow, blowing my mind here. I've already learned something. Okay, so you want to be able to make sure that anything you're doing is trackable. You can do that with phone numbers. So it sounds to me like even people who have a Google listing can do some of this if they don't have a website. A lot of
Right.
Yeah. So, and does Google provide businesses through this claim to Google listing some of these analytics of how many times they appeared in a search and how many times people clicked through and all of that stuff?
Right. So Google will give you like a monthly report, I believe, maybe even weekly, I'm not sure, which basically goes through how many people saw your listing, how many people interacted with it, what they did they go for directions, did they go to your website if you have one, did they call you from the listing. So because if you don't have a call tracking number on your listing, so it will just tell you how many people called you from click to call,
Mm-hmm.
which is still a pretty strong indication because you can always extrapolate that out.
But that's
Or
more of a mobile function than someone who looks at you on your website and picks up their phone and hand enters the number.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. But with Google listings, that's going to be a big part of your traffic. So it's still a really strong indication. So if you see your mobile calls have gone up by 20% versus last year, so then you're doing something right. If it's either going down, then you might want to work on that.
Okay, so number one analytic you want to look at as a business owner is you guys have a term for that, yes? That is called conversion.
Yeah, exactly.
All
All right. Well,
right,
you
go
want to
me.
get right conversion, and specifically, if possible, you want to also differentiate between new patient appointments and existing patient appointments, because while existing patient appointments are great, the goal of the goal of what we're discussing in relation to your marketing is new patient appointments. And so with form, or with, if you're using a third party scheduler, you want to try to be able to set that up so that it can track how many new patients are being generated from your efforts versus how many existing. With calls, that's where call recording becomes helpful to listen to the quality of calls, who's calling, um, and kind of differentiate between a new and existing patient.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm still in my head processing the tracker call numbers. So let me dig a little deeper into this. So say you send out a promotion, some sort of marketing that has one of these tracker call numbers in it that isn't the main number for your business.
Hmm.
So you can track the number of calls. If someone saves that tracker call number as the number of your business, which, you know, people often do.
Yeah, if you live in the 1800s, they save numbers. Then nowadays, very few people save numbers, but okay, we'll go with it.
I save the numbers of my service providers so I can generally call them up and let them know I'm running late.
Okay, okay, right.
Basically, does that, so those numbers? I'm just wondering how those numbers work. Like, if you're using them for a short period of time, just to sort of, and let's say, you know, a year being that short period of time, it isn't the registered business number of the business. But to kind of track a marketing initiative over the course of a year, you use this tracker number. What happens if a patient or a customer wants to reuse that number? How, that's you know, I'm just like, huh.
That's a good question.
I'm trying to come up with the shortcomings of this otherwise ingenious idea.
So we have a policy that we don't turn off call tracking numbers unless they have been inactive for 3 months. But the cost of call tracking numbers is much lower than you might think. We're talking about a few dollars a month, maximum. So we're not talking about a big investment. And if you're doing any kind of significant effort on marketing, it's a great way of getting a firm picture of what's working and what's not. And so it's you can keep it active for as long as you want, but in general, like, nobody's called it in a couple of months, probably they're not going to call it anyway.
Okay. And on the receiving end, I'm assuming these numbers are coming into hopefully a live person answering the call and starting the customer experience journey with a live person. Do they have any way of knowing where the call, like, I mean, in the time of pickup, the receptionist, whomever you have greeting patients or customers or callers, can they tell where the number is coming from, like which number it was called, or they are just treating all the calls the same and you have to kind of dig into the data on the back end to figure that out?
Theoretically, and I like that. I like the way you're thinking. Theoretically, that's possible. That isn't something that we do at this time, where there is a company that does do more of that kind of thing. I believe they're called Weave. But in general, they would experience the call the exact same way they would experience every other incoming call.
Okay. And so basically you're just sort of digging in at the end of the week and seeing which calls came into which number to determine which marketing effort has been the most successful, or the month or the year or whatever time period. Okay. Got it. I now feel like I need to get a number just to see. I should get a number for dates and just like hand them out to prospective romantic partners and see how many numbers come in. I'm sorry, I just went off on a tangent.
And there's many like intangibles that come out of it too. So just having the ability to assess how your staff is handling calls, when they're talking to patients. If you ever have an issue with a patient, you can look back and see what the issue was, going back and like looking into the call. These kinds of things add a lot of intelligence in the decision making of the practice, in training new staff. There's a lot of areas where calls are ripe for improvement, from hold time to the way your staff is handling the call to specialty calls, and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of benefits outside of just having a stronger sense of what works and what doesn't work, that also comes across from call tracking.
So some real world applications for this might be you do one promotional piece about a frame sale, one promotional piece about your new vision therapy specialty, and one promotional piece about a new associate who's just joined the practice. You use 3 different call tracker numbers and you see which one of those garnered the most interest based upon the calls to the office.
Yep. That could definitely be it. Or you're testing out if radio ads work, or you're testing out if Facebook ads are providing a good return for your investment, or if Google ads are, all of these different activities that all say that they're amazing and they're going to change your practice in terms of growth. The more information you have in terms of what it's really doing for you is going to be very helpful in determining what's worth spending your time and effort on, or how you can optimize it and tweak it to make it better.
Okay. I mean, and it goes without saying that, call tracking numbers are not the only way you can do that. You can do that with designated URLs. You can do it
Hmm.
with QR codes. There's a number of different ways you can go about doing it. And that's all about kind of testing to see which one works more
Correct.
effectively for your target audience. Okay, so call tracking numbers, click throughs, conversion is one of the most important analytics KPIs. Blows my mind. Okay, what might be some of the other ones that people should be looking at?
Okay, so maybe even more important, but uh, for a practice in a specific city, that's really your market for general care. And people don't look at page 2 of Google to try to figure out which optometrist they should get an eye exam at. They're going to look at those top 3 practices under the map. One of them has amazing reviews and everyone else doesn't. That's going to be the one they go to. If not, they might choose between those 3. And so, probably the second most important is where you are in the rankings for your city. As soon as you expand outside of your city, that's kind of like a different story and it's a little bit more complicated. But for general care, like eye doctor, eye exam, optometrist, eye care, optical, and then either near me or in your city, those are really, really, really strong indications of if you're doing what needs to get done. If you're not in the top 3, or if you're on the second page, God forbid, uh, that's gonna be a serious kind of metric that you should be focused on. I love a tool called Bright Local, local search result checker. You can Google that, um, and that lets you mimic a search, what's called a clean search. So if you search from your own computer, Google's looking at your IP address to look at exactly where you're located. They're looking at the history of where you've been. So it's not really going to show you what other people would see. So this tool allows you to set the city. It allows you to put in different search terms and then see what somebody would see when they come to Google and they're looking for general care. Um, those 5 main topics or main words are going to account for the majority of traffic, and they'll also shed quite a they'll pretty much give you the bigger picture as well. Meaning, if you're doing amazing in top 3 for all of those, 5 main terms, then you're probably doing well for a lot of sub terms. And if you're not doing well, then you're probably not doing well for other stuff as well.
Okay.
Um,
So
so
can you
that's
just say the name again of that service?
sure. Bright Local,
Right.
uh, right, BRIGHT local, and then you type that into Google. Maybe you type in local search checker, something like that.
Okay.
And it should show up either 1 or 2 on Google. And you just put it in and start checking out different things, depending on what the focus of the growth strategy is for the practice. So you'll be tracking different kinds of search terms. So, for example, for a general care focused practice, they'll be searching those 5 main terms. For a practice as a vision therapy practice, they're going to be searching vision therapy terms for not only their main city, but let's say the greater 60-mile radius around them and the cities there, and seeing where they're searching, where they're showing up, and how they're showing up. And that can also guide your strategy, because you don't want to focus on a term where you're showing up on page 20 in Google, because it will take you a long time to get a top. But if you're 5th, 6th down on the page, the difference of bumping that up to the top 3 will make a huge impact.
Okay. So if someone's listening right now and they haven't really devoted all that much effort yet into this, is that step number one? Step number one, go to Bright Local, see where I mean, that would be the benchmark, I'm imagining, before you devote any time or effort into some of these other marketing
Mm-hmm.
tactics. Know where you are right now. So everybody listening, first thing you do, figure out where you are right now before you do anything to see how you've improved, is to see where you fall in the ranking from outside independent third party view.
Yes, absolutely. And that will also give you a picture of what people are seeing. So that also kind of highlights the Google review thing. So if you do show up in the top 3, but you have a 4-star average and your competitor has 100 reviews and a 5-star average, so just kind of picture somebody who's looking for an eye exam near them, and they come up and that's what they're seeing. Are they going to choose you? And if not, that's going to be a really easy way to focus your attention on what's going to work. First of all, are you showing up when it's important? And then if you are showing up, are you showing up in a way that's going to get people to say, I want to choose that practice?
Okay, so that actually raises a good question, because you've mentioned it a couple of times now, reviews. What is your stance in terms of marketing your business when it comes to reviews? Should people be responding to their Google reviews? Does that help their Google ranking? And B, if you do not have a lot of reviews, is that something that you should be actively asking for in your practice of your current customer base to bump that ranking up?
Okay, so when I managed practices for 2 years, I would start every single conversation with if you're not maximizing your Google reviews, you should quit iCare Pro and focus all your attention on that.
Okay.
That's gonna be the most important thing that you should do. And second important thing is that Google reviews are important. Other reviews are far less important because we've already
So
established that
less
people.
worried about Yelp, less worried about ZocDoc than you are about your Google review
Right.
ranking.
So the primary
Okay.
strategy for any general care practice is going to be those 5 terms in your city. And those 5 terms in your city are not going to show Solution Reach or ZocDoc or Bird Eye, or they're going to show Google reviews. And so that's where you need to focus your attention on. Google reviews are going to be seen the most, but also they're going to be able to convert the most people to schedule an appointment by you. And so there's no such thing as kind of like too many Google reviews. There's and the last thing is that 40% of Google's equation of who to show at the top is based on your Google listing. And so the more reviews and the more continuous reviews you have, and the more you reply to them, that's all going to contribute you to have more visibility. So it all kind of plays on itself. It's just Google reviews are just so important. There may be very few cities like San Francisco where Yelp plays a strong role, but outside of, and if you're in a city where Yelp is super super popular, you don't need me to tell you that. If you don't know, then Yelp is not important.
So let me ask you, did Google, I know a few years ago this was a thing where we had, and I'm sure a lot of people would be familiar with this story. I won't mention any names because we don't need to glorify it, but there was a gentleman who had figured out how to game the system by being rude to people and getting more activity on his stuff because people were horrified by his rudeness and his harassment and his threats. But it in fact did raise his Google rankings, and Google recognized that this was a problem with their algorithm. Have they fixed that? It has to be positive interaction with customers, not just any interaction with customers, correct?
Well, I would say that if you have negative reviews, that's just going to be counterproductive. So if you have a practice that has great visibility, but they're showing up and have worse reviews than the competitor, so nobody's going to choose them.
Mm-hmm.
So you definitely want to focus on good reviews with glowing recommendations. And one of the nice things about having an active review strategy is that if you ever do get that disgruntled patient, which probably doesn't happen with any of the listeners here, but may happen to some
Never
practices.
happens.
If you have 300 reviews, that one review is nothing. It doesn't matter. If
Okay.
you only have 6 reviews, that one review is going to significantly impact what people's opinion of you is.
Okay. So the short answer to my question is yes, respond to your reviews, be they good or bad. And yes, you should be asking your current patients to review your business actively on Google.
Correct. 100%. Just
Okay.
just make sure that your response is HIPAA compliant. So
Right.
no,
Yes. Goes
no,
without saying, don't
no.
share private patient information in your response.
Even if that person left a bad review and you're really angry at them and say, still, uh,
Yes.
right.
Yes. So what is in that case if someone comes leaves a bad review and basically they were a horrible patient because you told them that they needed major vision correction and it was going to be a lot of money and there's really nothing they can do about that. What is a nice little like patent response to those sorts of reviews? Sorry you were unhappy with your service. Please
So
come back so we can try again. Period.
so the first thing you should do is try to reach out to them. I've had many practices who called and showed concern and cared and tried to remedy the situation where the patient actually went back and changed the review. So that's a good strategy. The best strategy for bad reviews is always going to have more reviews. If your latest 10 reviews are all 5-star, that 1-star that happened, even if it was 2 weeks ago, isn't really going to factor into anybody's decision-making process. And
Okay.
then I had one practice that said, it's interesting that you've said something bad about our practice because we have 180 other people who said only glowing remarks, if you see this and you mention this, you get 5% off of your next purchase.
Oh, so they used it as an opportunity to get more patients in by giving them a discount by mentioning their bad review.
Exactly.
Oh,
I would just say one thing
genius.
though, if you are going to reply to reviews, bad reviews, you just want to make sure that you don't exclusively apply to bad reviews, because that would highlight that and push it towards the top. So you want to make sure that if you're replying, you reply to all reviews, and if you're not replying, then you just don't reply. But I definitely recommend replying in general.
Well, that's it from us. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode. And if you'd like to learn more about Evan or iCare Pro, visit icarepro.net. And of course, you can always reach me directly at d@envisionmag.com. That's DEE@envisionmag.com. We'll see you next time. And until then, best wishes for your business.
Invision with D. Carroll is brought to you by Invision's Brain Squad. The Brain Squad is an amazing group of eye care professionals who answer short surveys from Invision each month. Are you an owner or top manager and ready to join the squad? Go to envisionmag.com/brain squad and sign up today. You and your brain will be glad you did.